Hello everyone, welcome back. I'm Dr. Vishal and this is the part 2 of knee biomechanics. Now we'll come to patellofemoral joint. Now it transmits tensile forces generated by the quadriceps to the patellar tendon and increases the lever arm of the extensor mechanism. Removal of patella will decrease the extension forces by 30%. So how it works the lever arm, if I draw here, so suppose this is your patella, this is your quadriceps, this is your patellar tendon and here is your femur. So femur center point is here. So this causes a lever arm function. So this whole system causes a lever arm function. So that is important. The motion of the patellofemoral joint is sliding articulation in full extent flexion. The patella moves 7 cm quarterly. Maximum contact between femur and patella is at 45 degree of flexion. This is important. Where the maximum contact with the femur is. Forces acting on patella. So laterally you have retinoculum, vastus lateralis and iliotibial band, while medially you have medial retinoculum and vastus medialis. Superiorly you have quadriceps via quadriceps tendon and inferiorly is by patellar ligament. Passive restraint to lateral subluxation are medial patellofemoral ligament, that is 60% of restraining forces, while medial patellofemoral ligament, that is 13% of restraining forces, and retinoculum is just 10%. So now I will show you what are the contact points during flexion part of patella which will come in contact with the femur. So at 10 to 20 degree of flexion, there will be a contact with inferior margin of medial and lateral facet. At 90 degree of flexion, all portion of patella will be in contact with femur except the odd facet. At 135 degree, contact is on lateral and odd facet with medial facet completely out of the contact. So now we will talk about the Q angle. So Q angle is the line or angle formed by the line drawn from the anterior superior iliac spine towards the center of the patella, and the second line is drawn from the center of the patella towards the tibial tuberosity, and the angle which is formed is called Q angle. Patellofemoral joint biomechanics is influenced by the direction and magnitude of the force exerted by the quadriceps muscles. In a normal knee, the line of force exerted by the quadriceps is lateral to the joint line and probably due to large force of vastus lateralis. So what is the normal value? So in male, it ranges from 8 to 10 degrees, while in female, due to the wider pelvis, it will increase to 15 degree plus minus 5 degree. So increase in Q angle result into or associated with increased risk of lateral subluxation of the patella. So how you measure this Q angle? So Q angle should be measured in full extension. Standing position is one considered to one or more suitable as it mimics the joint biomechanics during daily activities. Now what are the factors which influence the Q value or Q angle? So the factors increasing the Q angle are genu valgum, increased femoral anteversion, external tibial torsion, laterally positioned tibial tuberosity and tight lateral retinaculum. So now I will talk about the importance of ACL in biomechanics of knee. First and foremost important thing is it prevents anterior tibial displacement on femur. Secondly, it prevents hyperextension, varus valgus stress. Least stress on ACL is between 30 to 60 degree of flexion. Anterior medial bundle tight in flexion and in extension, while posterior lateral bundle tight only in extension. ACL control coupled anterior posterior translation and axial tibial rotation. PCL biomechanics. So primary stabilizer of the knee against posterior movements of the tibia on the femur, resist rotational, especially interrotation of tibia on femur. It has two bundles, anterior lateral taut in flexion while posterior medial taut in extension. Role of menisci. Menisci have following function: load bearing, stability, joint lubrication, prevent capsule synovial impingement and shock absorber. As the femur compresses through the meniscus into the tibia, it pushes the meniscus out of the joint cavity. The meniscus deforms to conform with the femoral condyle and allow for the contact to be distributed over the large area. Also, the meniscus increases its circumference and moves radially outward and posteriorly with knee flexion. following the rolling and sliding of the femoral condyle with flexion. During radial deformation, the meniscus is anchored by its anterior and posterior horns. During loading, tensile, compressive, and shear forces are generated. So now we'll talk about the axis of the lower limb. We'll talk about mechanical axis and anatomical axis.
So we'll talk about the mechanical axis. Mechanical axis of the bone is the straight line connecting the joint center points of the proximal and distal joint in the frontal or sagittal plane. Most of the mechanical axes are considered in the frontal plane. So as the mechanical axis is considered mostly in the frontal plane, we need to define only the frontal plane joint center points of the hip, knee and ankle. So in the hip joint, the center will be in the head. Now if you see here, this is your hip joint center. So on the x-ray you can see this is your first center which we have to find out, that is a hip joint center of the head. Second will be on the knee joint. Now knee joint you have to see the center of the knee joint. This is the second part. Now how to identify center of the knee joint? That condylar notch is there. The center of that notch will be the center of your knee joint. Then the third important point is our joint center we have to find out, that is an ankle joint. Again, the center between the both the edge. So center of the ankle you have to find out, mark it and make a straight line. So basically the mechanical axis is always a straight line. It will start from the center of the your hip center, passes from the center of the knee joint and then passes to the ankle joint center. So now we'll talk about anatomical axis. So anatomical axis is basically marked by marking the mid diaphyseal point. Now if you see, this is the femur which is created and this is the midpoint. This is the part which is the midpoint. Now midpoint can't be created here. Now you can see this is the wider portion. This is one of the wider portion. You can't make midpoint here, otherwise your anatomical axis will be wrong. So we have to find out the most cylindrical part of the bone, which is basically this diaphysis area, this diaphysis area. So we have to mark a midpoint here and this we have to connect the line. Now if you see the anatomical axis, it passes proximally from the piriformis, it comes towards your knee joint, and if you see here, it is not in the center of your notch. So if you see the femur notch is like this. So if you take an anatomical axis, your anatomical axis will be bisecting little bit medial. Okay, it will be little bit medial if you compare to the mechanical axis, which will be bisecting at the tip or at the center of the notch. That is the difference. If you see here also, so your anatomical axis is little bit on the medial side. Same thing happened in the anatomical axis of the tibia. Basically it is parallel to the mechanical axis, but mechanical axis will be the center of the two spine and it will be center of the ankle. But if you see the anatomical axis, it will be little bit medial to the, or you can you can say like it will start from the just middle or just below the medial spine and it will enter the ankle just little medial. It will be not center of the ankle joint. Now I will show you what is the difference between mechanical and anatomical axis. In tibia, it's almost parallel, so there is no such difference. But if you talk about anatomical axis, mechanical axis difference in the femur, you can see now this red line is mechanical axis, this red line of mechanical axis, and this is your purple type line is of your anatomical axis. If you see, it's creating some angle. This is the difference, and this difference is almost around 5 to 6 degree valgus. So this is the difference of anatomical and mechanical axis. This is the difference. If we compare that difference with the anatomical joint line, then it will be different. If you compare it with the joint line, this is the white line, you can see this is a joint line orientation. This is very important. It also forms some angle with your femur as well as with tibia. Then we will talk in some other lectures because it will be a very vast topic. So what happens when there is a deviation in the normal axis? So what happens if your tibio-femoral angle is more than 190 degrees? You will have a genu valgum. So genu valgum, if it's like 180 degree or less, it will form a genu varum. And you can see here, it's going inward. So genu valgum, and it's going outward. You can have a genu varum. What are the compressive forces in the dynamic knee joint? So it's 2 to 3 times body weight in normal gait. While like activity like running, stair and climbing, it will be 5 to 6 times the body weight. So with this, almost everything is covered. So with this, I will complete my second part on biomechanics of knee joint. I hope this lecture will help you to understand the normal biomechanics of the knee. If you have any doubt regarding the topic, you can comment in the comment box. We'll meet you in the next video. Till then, keep learning. Thank you.